Welcome, everyone, to the inaugural edition of Cybersecurity Unplugged. I'm your host, Peter Duda. I head up Global Crisis and Issues for Weber Shandwick. This is going to be a mixed media video podcast series where we're going to talk about the latest developments in the area of cybersecurity through a communications lens. And we'll be talking with experts in all areas of cybersecurity. For our first episode, I'm extremely excited to be joined by Troy Wilkinson. Troy is the Chief Information Security Officer at Interpublic Group, which is Weber Shandwick's parent company. Troy's has a long, illustrious career in cybersecurity as one of the world's leading experts. And I'm very excited to talk to him today about things cyber. And welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Peter. Really appreciate the time being with you today.
Troy, we were, both just got back, and I guess for you, it wasn't that long a trip from Black Hat USA.
Mhm.
Great event, a lot of people there, a lot of energy, a lot of great discussions. And I'd like to kick off by asking you, what do you think were the top three things? What was the buzz about this year? What were people talking about? And what do our viewers and listeners, what should they be thinking about based on those the many discussions that were had in Vegas last week?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, it was good to see everybody back here at Black Hat. It really felt like it was back in full swing. The events were sold out. The lines were around the corner. A lot of people got impatient with that, but I was actually happy to see everybody back in full force, and some of our friends from the kind of the three pillars, as I call them. So you have the entrepreneurs and the folks bringing technology to the market. You have the risk executives like myself, or those who are practicing in cyber. Then you had the venture capitalists there who were funding this initiative and innovation, and top that all off with some of the national security folks that were in town and talking about CISA and some of the things they're doing from the federal side. Really exciting to see everybody, first of all. So that was the number one kind of observation. We're back. That's great. There were really three big topics last week. And I think the number one topic that was kind of the underlier of every conversation that I had was really the macroeconomic situation,
Mhm.
how this current climate is affecting your budget, how it's affecting your spending, your talent, all of the things. And so every conversation about technology and innovation also went to, can we afford this? What are we going to replace to get this? And how are we going to find efficiencies to do more with less? And so that was number one. Number two is certainly artificial intelligence. I think that as ChatGPT and other AI has come to be household names, I think that was a huge topic here when we start talking about large language models and how we're training generative AI on all these different tools and techniques. That was certainly a topic almost at every booth that I visited and every person that I was talking to. So that was a big theme. I think the third one really is the SEC regulations that just dropped last month, talking about that 4-day window of incident reporting and kind of the effects on us as practitioners of how we're going to be prepared for complying with that and making sure that we have that partnership with the business to determine materiality, which usually doesn't fall on the CISO, as in my case, but certainly to be a partner in that decision making process to make sure that we're hitting those regulations on time.
Yeah, I those were certainly key themes that that I think I heard people talking about, that I read about. Let's double click on some of those. Starting out with people are people concerned about budgets and the economy, and it seems to be as like the prospect of this recession has been predicted for a long, long time. But it seems, are you seeing even in your space right now that people are being more cautious with budgets? And a follow up question I have: can we afford not to make the right investments in cybersecurity right now, given the ubiquitousness of attacks, whether ransomware is rampant, and for someone in your position, your job is tougher than ever. Can we not invest?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I think, that as an industry goes, we're still spending money on cybersecurity and protections, but I think we're doing it more strategically and we're really putting risk to dollars and making sure that we're deploying capital in a way that makes sense for the business. We are finding efficiencies where possible. We're replacing legacy technology where possible. So I have heard a lot of conversations about how do I get this new thing that we want to fill this gap here, uh, while I still have this other tech stack. And I see a lot of CISOs making those, determinations of what do I get rid of? How do I make this work? and how do I empower the business to be successful and reduce risk at the same time?
In terms of investments, I'm looking at this from the communications perspective. Oftentimes find that clients are willing to spend whatever it takes when they have a live situation, but I'm a big believer in red teaming and preparedness and getting plans together and doing drills and getting the team together. I think it's money well invested in the long term can save can save reputation, can save market cap. It's a great investment. Do you see sitting where you sit? The How do you see the importance of preparedness of having a plan in place and getting the CISO at the table to talk about the communications plan, which I think is critical in every cyber situation that I've been involved
100%. And I think the language of today is the meme mentality. And there's this great meme about the budget before a breach and the budget after a breach. It's a massive difference, right? You don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to be underfunded. First of all, you don't want to be to the point that you're not prepared for a breach. And then, of course, after a breach, you have these ultimate resources. But what I find is that companies in the middle of a crisis, even with all the resources that are thrown at them, don't have a way to deploy them in a way that's effective to mitigate the crisis at hand. So, as you just mentioned, one of the biggest things I think every CISO listening to this and every security practitioner is going to really resonate with the fact that tabletops and preparedness drills and getting your executive leadership involved with you and practicing crisis beforehand is the key to success. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen; is when is it going to happen? And you got to make sure that you're having these conversations long before you're in a boardroom trying to figure out who's going to be negotiating with the hackers, who's going to be doing the operational stuff, who's going to be doing the executive stuff. You have to have that ironed out long before and have that mapping in place.
Yeah, certainly have seen a trend. I just think I think more companies need to move with more alacrity, but getting the decision makers in the room, and it's not just the CISO, but it has to be the CEO, it has to be the general counsel, it has to be the people who are managing customer relationship. Everyone that's going to be have stakeholders that are going to have to manage and that are going to have to be involved in running the business. Um, Really needs to. I think it's invaluable to really understand the kind of dynamics, the pressures, the emotional reaction you're going to have if you are facing a major breach. And every drill that I've worked with, people like it's been such a great platform for the CISO, for people like you, because it really it's there's no substitute from hearing from you in a simulation in terms of what are the things we need to think about, what are the actions uh, that we need to take, what are the consequences of action and inaction, of communication and non-communication. Um, and I think doing the drills is certainly creates a much more resilient organization. It's very different than doing a lecture or talking about what might happen. But I'd recommend uh, to all my clients and to CISOs to really make sure they're doing a dynamic drill where they're kind of showing off their stuff with the C-suite, but also making sure that that people really think through kind of the uh, some of the tough decisions they're going to have to make ahead of time rather than doing it for the first time when you're under live fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentor, security leaders that are coming up and either want to be a CISO or they're new CISOs and, they're deathly afraid of their CEO. They're deathly afraid of sitting in a room and having a conversation with them about this and this kind of, this segmentation of duties. Or they're afraid of their board or they're afraid of their CFO. It's really about, that leadership skill of getting the time in the seat with your CEO to say, look, during a crisis, this is going to be your number one priority. You know, um, and so you need to be prepared for what may come. Here's the scenarios you may be faced with. Here are some of the decisions you may be faced with. And here are some of the things that I'm going to need from you. I'm going to need from the board as far as approvals and things like that. So that, when you come into a crisis, you're not dealing with it. I like to say, you don't need to find out during the hurricane that the batteries in the flashlight are dead, right? You need to
Right?
be ready
Yeah.
and you need to be checking those batteries. And so same thing in security, as we sit in that room and we prepare this, ourselves and we prepare our operational teams how to respond to an incident response. We're really good about executing on incident response and who does what and how do the backups work and who has the key to that. All those things seem to go pretty flawlessly because we've practiced it 1,000 times. But that
Right.
executive level, execution and being able to get the right people in the room, that is where it falls apart. And you mentioned communications earlier. I want to touch on that for a moment because, having pre-canned communications ready to go to both your internal stakeholders as well as your external stakeholders is so important because you don't want to be trying to decide in the moment of a crisis how to communicate to your internal and external stakeholders, you know, in a way that maintains your brand identity, in a way that maintains, the flavor of how you communicate both to your internal and external stakeholders. In the moment of a crisis, you're going to be totally frustrated. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be, not thinking in a manner that is consistent with you would on a normal day-to-day basis. So can't underscore that enough. Pre-canned communications, have that ready, have that direct line of communication, chain of command, who's going to do what at that time and who makes that communication. I love the fact that, in my position, I'm an influencer and I give information to the right people, but there are people who are much smarter than I am who are ready to, execute on those things we practiced here at IPG.
Yep. And no substitute for preparation. And I think I always say, I've heard you say, it's not a question of if, but when, right? So being prepared, critical for every organization. Let's shift over to AI, right? It seems like 5 years ago people couldn't spell AI, and now it's the only thing that people are talking about. Uh, but talk about what you see as what you learned or what you heard people talking about at Black Hat in terms of the challenges that AI is bringing to people like you, and some of the solutions. And how do we need to think about the risks differently? What do we need to do?
Yeah, it's an exciting time for cybersecurity professionals. In 2012, Stu McClure came out with Cylance, which was one of the very first early additions of artificial intelligence algorithms in cybersecurity, and we've kind of been living with them ever since. You see AI and ML on every product marketing sheet since that time. But with the household name of ChatGPT, and now understanding what these large language models can do for us, threat actors are taking advantage of that. So not only do we have to look at the solutions we're buying to see if they are actually artificial intelligence capable, but we also have to understand that we're already seeing attacks, already seeing phishing emails, already seeing malware being created by these artificial intelligence engines. Because when you take the guardrails off of ChatGPT and you stand up your own large language model or some other AI engine, you can do some pretty bad things pretty quickly. As an example, 0-day vulnerabilities. You used to have a week or two of buffer to patch your systems and get things in place before the hackers or attackers were able to take that public information and turn it into an exploit. Now with ChatGPT and others, they're able to do that within hours. And so we're seeing already this emergence of 0 days that are being leveraged for attacks almost instantly. And then of course the phishing emails where threat actors may not have English as their first language, and so attacks were a little harder in the past, and now they're perfect grammar, perfect punctuation, much harder to see from that perspective. So definitely going to see an uptick in threats that are either empowered by AI and things like that, but also definitely things that are going to be technically empowered by AI, such as exploits and malicious code creation. On the flip side of that, as we talk about Cylance and AI, that evolution thankfully has been in place in the background for years in the cybersecurity industry. We have been using AI for many, many years. And I was excited at Black Hat this year to see Sentinel One, who is rolling out Purple.ai, which is their new natural language processing AI engine, so that we can actually turn our security data into a large language model that then we can search with that AI functionality. So that's just one example of many companies doing that, but I was quite impressed by that. I think that's going to be the future for us. So, how do we find bad guys faster? That's always been the number one tenet. Number two is how do we make more use of the data we're already collecting in the cybersecurity industry? Huge field, open greenfield, I think, opportunity for companies going forward.
Yeah, AI is even, Weber Shandwick, we were looking at how do we apply it to our work, and we found, that we know what the threats are, and especially in the digital age, the conversations are out there. And as you know, and as people in your community know, a lot of, with a lot of foreign government intelligence service involvement now in cyber attacks, a lot of these people are also getting involved in social media attacks for the sake of causing problems in the United States or other countries, influencing politics, influencing public opinion. But we've been doing this for communicators, but we also found that the CISO community has been very interested in some of our work in this area because we can identify the networks that are engaging in malicious conversation about our clients, and also identify who those people are, and oftentimes identify threat actors uh, to provide some early warning in terms of a potential actual going something from beyond a social media attack to a cyber attack. Because we've seen many of the intelligence agencies, the same, the people down the hall are the ones who are doing the cyber work, and around the corner are their buddies that are attacking on social media. So, um, it's a complicated world. The bad guys have it. It's good that we have it as well, um, to you know, help mitigate, identify risks, and provide the right solutions with seeing things that we, quite frankly, before had the AI tools, we just weren't able to see. Um,
Yeah, and Peter, I just wanted to jump in there because you and I have talked a lot about some of the really cool things you're doing with Blackbird AI. Can you touch on that for just a second? I think that certainly my network would be interested in it, but
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
We've started. For some time we've been working with Blackbird AI, which is one of the premier shops in the area of narrative intelligence. And what that basically means is understanding what are the narratives out there, and also helping our clients and organizations come up uh, with the right counter narrative. But step one, and I think what's been really eye opening to us is when you actually get into the data and the conversations, you could really find out that a lot of in almost every major crisis or major issue that's being discussed on social media today, um, some of it is authentic, but a lot of it is being manufactured. There are people who are promulgating it. There are networks that are being set up. Um, and oftentimes when things take off, and often, as I mentioned before, when things take off, either being promulgated or being amplified by intelligence services, as well. But it's a precarious world. But what's most, I think, meaningful and eye-opening to us is saying, okay, given that this is going, we can really see where do we put our resources and who do we need to influence. And we don't waste time, money, or energy on getting involved in conversations that are either inauthentic or being, driven by bot armies or networks that know how to amplify stories, to
hmm
making sure that we're understanding who's promulgating the conversations, putting the right strategy in place against it. And fact of the matter is that 70% of media still say that they get story ideas from social media. So making sure that we're understanding what's out there, so we can get in with the right counter narrative, address the audiences that are actually looking for the facts, and making sure we're not wasting time, money, and energy, and shadow boxing people who are walking into traps that are being set. Um, so it's been eye opening for our communications clients, for boards, for CEOs, just because I think it's given us a whole different viewpoint in terms of what's driving conversation about them, and
hmm
helping us develop data driven strategies, and in formulating the right counter narrative to make sure that we can help them protect their businesses, their reputation, and their license to operate. Exciting
yeah,
stuff, we've just getting started. We've been doing it for a couple years now, and it's something that's incorporated in almost everything that we do today.
yeah, it's exciting because a little bit off a cyber topic, but next year, 2024 is an election year. All the false narratives we dealt with last time. I can't wait to see what this next cycle looks like and how we combat that. Hopefully, we can put a pin in false narratives and get more to the truth for folks. I know that's a little bit off topic for cyber, but as you think about that in a cyber lens and how threat actors are weaving a narrative or doing phishing or doing social engineering, it does kind of have it goes hand in hand in some ways.
Yeah, and for the CISOs listening, they're love to have some. If you're interested, love to kind of show the kind of intel that we can provide you that's actually relevant to the protection work that you do, and how it can serve. Understanding these narratives and who's promulgating them can serve as an early warning system for you. Um, and reach out. Happy to set up some time. I think you'll find it. We love talking about it. We love showing it off, and I think you'll find it fascinating, interesting, and ultimately useful.
Absolutely. And as we pivot into number three, which was that the SEC regulations, pivoting away from AI now, SEC regulations and the different requirements for reporting. That was a big topic during Black Hat. A lot of folks looking at, how do we comply with this? When does the clock start ticking? I think the SEC has done a really good job of defining that in their uh, regulation and what they've published. But I still think there's some concern, right? 4 days is a quick turnaround time to have something ready to put out. But Peter, did you hear some folks talking about that in your circles at
Yeah,
Black Hat this year?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, 4 days is a short amount of time. I think it speaks to what you raised, Troy, which is you need to have some stuff in the can, right? You always calibrate it and customize it for the situation at hand, but you're not starting from square one. That certainly increases the opportunity for success. And then, the question, I know it's a legal question, but I think, Troy, the lawyers are going to be looking to you to kind of understand when is it material, because you're the one who's going to understand what's actually they're going to be
Hmm.
basing their legal conclusion based on the data you give them, right? Your understanding of the situation. So I think it's a huge legal question, but I think the pressures on CISOs and everyone looking to understand, materiality, like how big a deal is this? What's going on? What do we know? Um, and oftentimes, especially and you're going to want to make sure you're not going to be the poster child for the SEC saying you should have gotten something out earlier.
Hmm.
But working in this area for a long time, there's so much you don't know in the beginning, right? So
Hmm.
you're going to have to rely on your experience and the data you have in hand and make an assessment is like, where are we right now? And that's just, um, I don't know, it seems like in almost every situation I've been in, the understanding of the situation in day 5 is very different than the understanding of the situation on day 10, right?
Hmm.
As you get into the data and you do your forensics. So, it's, I know it's a legal question, but I think the pressure is going to be on the CISO
Yeah,
uh,
I
to,
think I
and
think you're
if people are
spot
going to be
on.
relying on you.
I do. I believe you're spot on, and I think that I'm super fortunate at IPG to have those great relationships. And I encourage people listening, if you don't have a fantastic relationship with your legal team, your privacy counsel, and all the folks that are involved in that decision of materiality, which is should be outside the CISO's office, should never be a CISO's decision on materiality. That's a business decision. That's a legal decision, etc.
Right.
That partnership, that relationship is so crucial to the success of an incident response plan and a procedure. I can't stress that enough. I'm very fortunate to have those partnerships and would highly stress, building those bridges, making those relationships. But I want to take, on the flip side of that, this 4 day requirement is going to benefit us as consumers because how many breaches are you familiar with that have gone months and months before the company made a public disclosure? This is going to
Right.
certainly help us as consumers. So I understand the precipice behind this. But I want to take an example of Tim Brown over at SolarWinds, phenomenal CISO, and was actually a success story of coming through the 2020 SolarWinds, attack and doing everything right, engaging the right people, getting the right information out there, and still he, is being charged civilly by the SEC, which hopefully he'll be able to work through. But this is a great example of you've done everything you can, and yet you still face these consequences. This is a success story that we're now seeing the negative implications. So it's definitely a wake up call, as you say, Peter. CISOs are listening. The Joe Sullivan case and now Tim Brown. We're sitting back and we're looking at this very carefully to make sure that we're doing the right things in our organizations to protect ourselves, but also protect the company, protect the consumers.
Yeah, the counsel I always give is like, look, we always want to do the right thing, but you can't do the right thing until you have the data that you need to make the decision, to make the informed decision.
Mhm.
Pressure's going to be on, but I think it also speaks to, as you said, build those relationships. Um, doing the simulations, the exercise of the drills with the legal team. So did you understand how each other think? Right? It's so uh, any way building of the relationship is good, but I think when these um, these relationships become deeper and more meaningful as you work through problems together, and always good to do that before you're actually dealing with the live crisis. But I don't envy the position that the legal team or CISOs are going to be in now with the new SEC requirements. But you know, we always rise to the challenges that we face, and we do our best, right?
100%.
Well, I think we're coming up in time. Troy, any closing remarks you'd like to send out to the community, and closing thoughts on Black Hat, or just what CISOs and others should be thinking about today?
Yeah, certainly looking forward to RSA, which is our next big conference coming up, and then Black Hat again next year. The difference between the two tend to be more product focused versus more education focused. But at the same time, it was encouraging to see the community come back out. The from the entrepreneurs who are putting out new technology to the risk executives who are practitioners to the venture capital who are funding that innovation. Really excited to see where we are today, and just want to encourage the community to continue growing and working together to support each other. We don't live on islands. The bad guys are really good at sharing information, and we should be, just as good at sharing information on how to, protect ourselves and each other from these cyber attackers. So, thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Troy, and thanks again for joining our first edition of Cybersecurity Unplugged, and to our listeners and viewers. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to having you join us in the near future. We will be bringing experts from all areas of cybersecurity to talk about recent trends, developments, focus on very much focus on practical things that you can apply in your day-to-day life and dealing with the challenges that cybersecurity present today. So stay tuned for upcoming editions. Thanks for joining us. Troy, once again, thank you for being here today. Look forward to seeing all of you very soon.
Thank you.